Welcome to my FAR presentation on overfishing. Overfishing is the taking of wildlife from the oceans at such a high rate that those species cannot replace themselves. It drains the supply of fish stocks and it causes the food chain to be imbalanced, as well as the decimation of many species. How it began. Beginning in the early 1800s, the concept of industrial fishing rose. As the oil lamp became popular, there was an increase in the demand for oil. Companies began hunting down the whales for their blubber in order to meet the market demand. As whales, specifically sperm whales, were sought after, their population began to decline due to the high amounts of death and hunting. This began the concept known as overfishing, which is the taking of a species at a rate where it cannot replace itself. As new technologies advanced, so did the industrial fishing field. What is it caused by? Overfishing is caused by more accurate and efficient technology, which increases the ability to catch more fish. It is also due to weak monitoring and regulation, as well as poor enforcement. This lack of regulation makes it easier to poach or illegally fish, which has serious consequences. There has also been an increase in destructive fishing methods to capture as many fish for the market. Those methods cause damage to the surrounding environment, surrounding species, and the food chain in whole. Because of overfishing, populations remain at low levels and they have a slow recovery. The whole ocean is affected, including not only the fish stock, but other animals in the ocean's habitat. The increase in technology has led to some very destructive fishing methods. One of these methods, bottom trawling, is the use of large nets with weights to drag on the bottom to catch multiple fish or shrimp. They target the specific kinds, but usually they capture other juveniles, non-targeted fish, crabs, turtles, and corals. It damages the reef and it affects all the species in that area, as many cannot escape. It also permanently damages the seafloor habitats. So the reefs that were there are now destroyed because of the nets dragging and pulling it up from the seafloor. This can also lead to abandoned gear. The nets are often abandoned and they can ensnare animals as well as dislodge corals with the movement of waves. Commonly you'll see turtles caught in the net or dolphins and they cannot escape, so they end up dying because they are stuck in the net. Other technologies include blast fishing, which is the use of explosives in the reefs to stun the fish. It allows them to be easily caught and kept alive in order to be fresh on the market. This method is limited to the shallow parts of the reef, and because of this, the blast from the blast fishing destroy large sections of coral and reefs. Most of the time, the reefs cannot recover because the amount of fishing done in that area. It disrupts the whole area with the blast, it decimates the coral, and it stuns all varieties of marine species, not just the targeted. So then again, you have your turtles, you have your dolphins, you have your other fish, juveniles, crabs, they're all stunned, which can affect them later, and they could possibly die. Another technology is the use of cyanide. Cyanide stuns the fish. It's a chemical and it's toxic to both the coral and the fish, and it damages the structures and reefs because of it. Fish attempting to escape will hide in the coral, and they will get caught deep between it, and then the fishers have to break the coral in order to extract the stunned fish. About 1/3 to 1/2 of the fish collected will die, and it renders the harvest not as profitable. Because of this, they have to harvest more in order to make up for the loss of dead fish. Bycatch is also related to the nets and the blast fishing and the cyanide. Bycatch is the unwanted marine species caught while fishing for another species. It can amount to 90% of the catch, meaning that in order to have an effective catch, the process of fishing must be repeated. This in turn can damage the reefs again, other fish, and those caught are typically cast back into the ocean, and they do not survive because of the traumatic event. Every year, there's about 38.5 million tons of bycatch. When compared with the 90%, that's not a lot of fish caught for the market. That's a lot of fish that are accidentally caught and do not survive because of the traumatic event. The major effects of overfishing on the food chain. If you remove one species from the food chain, the whole chain can collapse. In the image on this slide, you can view a basic food chain consisting of the different levels of consumers and producers. In this example, take the species of tuna, which is a tertiary consumer. If you remove that consumer, the secondary consumer group will expand as there is no predator to regulate that population level. Removing a species not only affects the bottom of the food chain but also the top. Quaternary consumers such as large sharks eat tuna. If their food supply is removed, if the tuna is removed, then there is nothing for the quaternary consumers to eat, and their populations will decline due to starvation. Although this food chain is simple, it applies to all the complex predators and prey. It is important to balance because the removal or reduction in one population will upset the whole process. Because of overfishing, many species cannot regulate the growth of their prey. This can lead to serious issues such as the change from coral to algae dominance, which can cause algae blooms. Commonly known as the red tide, the massive amounts of algae produce toxins that taint the air and water. These toxins affect both humans, marine, and land species. Many marine life washes ashore dead, and humans can get violently sick if exposed. The algae can also contaminate food supply, and tainted shellfish and fish can lead to serious illness and possibly death. Because the algae uses so much oxygen, when they die, microbes deprive the nearby waters from that oxygen. Those animals in the surrounding areas not only are tainted by the toxins, but can suffocate due to lack of oxygen, all because one species was removed, which allowed the algae to grow. The major effects on ocean habitats. Another critical condition brought on by overfishing is that of the ocean habitats, specifically the reefs. Abandoned gear may destroy coral reefs as nets move with the current and drag through the reefs. Other habitats may be destroyed with the use of blast fishing and cyanide fishing, which was discussed in previous slides. These can destroy the pulps in the coral, and it can be decimated beyond return. Anchors can also rip sections of reef. As the waves move the ship on the surface of the water, the anchor must be secured in the reef. If the waves are too strong, the anchor may break through the reef, destroying coral and sea life and leaving a pathway of destruction where coral may no longer occupy. Needed steps to stop overfishing. Global management. One of the solutions to overfishing is global management of the oceans. Called co-management, this collaborative arrangement is between local communities, conservation groups, and governments to create a widespread protection of fish stocks. This solution includes the making and enforcing of their own rules in fisheries that are uniform across the participating regions. The few who have tried this solution have reported that co-managed reefs were half as likely to be heavily overfished, which reduces the effects of overfishing and increases the fish population in that area. Working across governments can improve the lack of regulation and policies and instead create adequate and effective management protocols across water. This uniformity will also help reduce the amount of migratory species caught in unregulated waters. Another needed step is legislation. Countries must commit to ending overfishing through laws and regulations. One example of a law that helps recover fish stocks is the Magnuson-Stevens Act. This Act provided a framework for rebuilding stocks. It set annual catch limits according to scientific surveys and along the policy of adaptive management. This law also issues permits to fishing companies, regulates the types of gears, and establishes time periods and zones for off-limit fishing. Other countries have created laws and enforce certain types of methods. For example, the Philippines have banned cyanide fishing by establishing a network of detection laboratories, testing live export fish, tightening control on the distribution of cyanide, and overall public awareness campaigns. These laws help protect the fish in the surrounding environment and are necessary for sustainability. Another needed step to stop overfishing is the protection of marine areas. By setting up more protected areas, it can protect those reefs formerly damaged and allow for restoration and regrowth. Other areas would protect the breeding grounds, spawning areas, and estuaries, which is a habitat where juveniles live and grow until adulthood. Only 4.8% of the oceans are protected in actively managed marine areas. By protecting these areas, it allows for an area for the fish stock to feed and recover from fishing threats. Another needed step to stop overfishing is aquaculture and the rebuilding of stock. Aquaculture is the farming of fish for food and replenishing of fish stock. Example of fish grown and harvested this way are Arctic char and bass. Farm fish are raised inland in pools to create less of an impact on the ocean and the environment. On this side, you can see an image of a pool. In it, there are juveniles and different sizes of fish, and they are closely monitored and fed to ensure the rapid growth and restock. Farmed seafood also tends to be more sustainable as the fish population can be more easily managed, controlled, and regulated. Not only are fish raised, but so are other types of seafood, such as mussels, algae, shrimp, and others. It may seem difficult to personally stop overfishing as it is a global issue, bigger than one individual. However, by following these steps, one can help raise awareness and push for the end of overfishing. First, only purchase seafood that has sustainably sourced and certified. Pay attention to the labels when selecting seafood. You can also choose farm fish over wild fish because of all new advances in aquaculture. You can also check the app Seafood Watch to see if your seafood is a sustainable product and if you should purchase it. Second, support organizations that focus on sustaining fisheries and conserving the marine environment. This can be done through membership, donations, or volunteering. Third, encourage the passage of fishery laws. Write to your elected officials and political parties to show your concern and encourage more focus on the topic. Fourth, discourage illegal fishing. Make sure you have a license and follow the annual catch limit when catching fish in oceans and lakes. Following the limit encourages others to do likewise, which can help them lower the number of fish caught illegally. And most importantly, spread the word. Tell your friends, family, neighbors, and community members about this issue. You could write to local newspapers, websites, blogs, and bring attention to the issue and awareness to the community. By raising awareness, it brings attention to it nationwide, which can help improve legislation and the push for sustainable fishing.